right, here we are. Welcome, everyone. I'm Olia. I lead developer experience at Rootstock Labs. Rootstock is the first and longest running Bitcoin sidechain. And what makes it really special is that it is fully VM compatible. So there is a ton of different libraries and tools that you can use that you might already know whilst building on Rootstock. We've created a series to walk you through some of the integrations and tools that we have, so that you can fully enjoy all the benefits. And today we have a very exciting project that we're talking about. It's Hyperlane. We all got very excited when we first started working on it. And we have Eda with us who will talk us through the project and all the benefits and all the cool things you can build. So welcome, Eda. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and to talk about Hyperlane today. A bit about me. I'm a developer advocate working on Hyperlane. So today I'll be giving like an overview of like what we're doing, an introduction to interoperability, and also like how you can create your own route, our implementation of token bridging with Hyperlane. So hopefully we'll also be doing some like live demos. Fingers crossed that it works, but that's like a quick short intro about what's coming next.
All right, perfect. Well, I think without any further ado, let's just dive in and see what Hyperlane actually is.
Okay, awesome. Let me quickly share my screen. I have like a short deck and then we'll move on to the demo.
I love the branding, by the way, of Hyperlane. It's one of my favorite. I think it's it
Credits
really
to the
stands out.
team. I'm just using the slide deck. Not my touch at all. I have zero design skills. But okay, awesome. So we can get to it. So hi again, everyone. Today I want to give like a short introduction to the blockchain ecosystem and where interoperability fits in, and then we'll walk around like how Hyperlane creates some like how you can create your own token bridge with Hyperlane warp routes. And just to give like a bit of context before we get deeper. And so when you look at the blockchain world today, you see that there are multiple layer ones, like starting with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cosmos, like the major L1 players. And then we realize, especially when you like zoom into the ecosystems themselves, is that okay, maybe like the just having an L1 is not the way to scale. You need like these other extra for the Ethereum case, for example, it moves towards like a roll-up centric roadmap where you need like roll-ups to scale the network itself. And then we see the rise of like different roll-ups like Optimism Base, different chains. And then what we see now is that there are also like a lot of roll-up as a service solutions, which makes it so easy to create your own roll-up that now we're having like we went from having a very homogeneous ecosystem with just like one or two networks to now suddenly being like ultra fragmented, different networks, so easy to launch. You can simply launch your own roll-up like in a few clicks. So this is kind of like to set the stage on how the blockchain ecosystem looks like today. So okay, like yeah, but what does this mean? So now that we went from like having, one or two networks which could potentially communicate with each other to having multiple fragmented ecosystems which need like extra solutions to communicate to each other because that's not directly baked in to the networks themselves. And when we look at it, interoperability between rollups is sparse and highly fragmented, leading to disconnected apps, fragmented assets, and user friction. So just to kind of give an example, for example, when you have like your own, when your own app, which is running on a certain network, like let's take on any kind of network, let's say Base, for example, then what happens is that your apps is limited to that ecosystem. But what you want to do is you want to kind of extend your app to connect to multiple ecosystems so then you can transfer assets, you can transfer messages from one to another. So like you can transfer from Base to Optimism, from Base to Rootstock, from Base to an L1 to itself. And that's kind of the vision we have with building an interoperability protocol. And not just us ourselves, but we're seeing like the general blockchain ecosystem move towards understanding the importance of interoperability within the whole like networks. And yeah, before we were like, okay, this is fine, this is okay, like you can just be on one network. But obviously we would all like to be that chill person being like, this is fine. But that doesn't really create like a good user experience, developer experience, any kind of experience for anyone. So this is exactly where permissionless cross-chain interoperability comes in. So we mentioned that there are different chains, there are different rollups, which you kind of deploy them out of like in a few clicks, but they are within themselves. And in most cases, in most like networks, you don't really need to go and be like, oh, hey, like Ethereum, can I deploy a smart contract or can I deploy an app? These are generally permissionless networks, which you can go ahead and deploy an app yourself. And the way we see like interoperability fit in is that it should also be the same as you can just go in and deploy a network, like not a network, but deploy an app on a network yourself. You kind of want to have the interoperability baked in without having to go and, create business deals or like extra friction, which creates for both like chain teams or app teams. So that's kind of like our vision for permissionless cross-chain interoperability. So now you have these different chains where you can directly, without asking permission, deploy your smart contracts to, hence the permissionless. And then likewise, you want these different chains to communicate permissionlessly with each other. I know that this is a mouthful, so I like to like just kind of like step aside and explain, especially I'm not a native English speaker. I'm like, what does this mean?
Yeah, it's all the lingo. It's all quite complex, but very good explanation. I think you're doing great.
Appreciate it. And anytime when there's questions, feel free to jump in, Olia. Like I'm happy to like explain further. And so I talked about the vision we have for permissionless cross-chain interoperability, and this is exactly where Hyperlane fits in. So simply put, Hyperlane is a permissionless interoperability protocol for cross-chain communication with modular security. And I will deep dive on all these topics as well. But the goal here is, so you have all these different networks and you want them to communicate. So what we've been working on at Hyperlane is building that interoperability layer, which allows you to plug and play security modules. So then you can upgrade as new features come out. And it's permissionless, meaning that you don't have to go ahead and be like, hey, like Hyperlane team, can you actually deploy this? But we allow like anyone to connect their chains, deploy their routes, without having to go through an additional process. So I will also like double click on the aspects here because I think they are kind of important. But again, we touched on the permissionless part. Like where you can totally run all the infrastructure yourself. We have all the guides set up. Of course, it does make sense sometimes, like just as if when you use cloud technologies, you probably want to use like AWS or Google Cloud yourself. So just as they kind of abstract the complexity, there are like infrastructure which we kind of provide out of the box for different teams to use our infrastructure, but we make that open source so anyone can actually go ahead and deploy it themselves. And then for the modular security, I believe I have like a few more details on that as we move forward in the slide. But basically, it allows you to have these custom modules. You can think of them as like Lego blocks, which you can fit based on your app's need. So if you have like a financial application which requires high security, you can, add like an extra module over there. But if you have a game and you value like it being faster and you don't need like that much security requirements, you can customize your security based on that. And then the simplified cross-chain communication, that's basically the goal of interoperability itself. And we have different tools which kind of make it as the warp routes, which I will explain, where we try to abstract away the complexity and allow users to easily like use Hyperlane's infrastructure and deploy their own routes. And the modular security. So
here are the Lego blocks.
Exactly. It's always nice to have a visual, like not so much words on slides, but like the Lego blocks.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into too much technical, like what do you call like technical terms?
Sorry, Eda, just a very quick one before we move on to the next topic. If somebody wants to find out more about the architecture, because you obviously like showed a very high level, where's the best place to go? Would that be documentation? Is it the white paper? Where does one find more details on that?
Exactly. The Hyperlane documentation, docs.hyperlane.com, I think, or maybe XYZ. We'll just have a look as well. And I can actually show that because I have it open over here. So docs.hyperlane.xyz. Let me hide this. So you can come over here and we have like all the guides as well, but in the learn section, you will have like more details on the protocol overview. So you'll have over here the details of how the mailbox works, how the send contract works. I mentioned the ISMs over here, how the gas calculation works, because that was like a very high level overview, but someone might be wondering, okay, like if I transfer a message, like who pays for the gas? Like where is that recorded? Which function do I transfer a message from? So all the information you need are here, as well as the agent information. If you want to if you are running a relayer or a validator, you can find the details here. But yeah, the short answer is the docs.
Perfect. Thank you. No, it's great.
Super. Okay, so I think that was actually like a great addition. I forgot to mention that. But now we can move on to the work routes and then hopefully do a demo for the work routes as well. But the idea of work routes is they use Hyperlane's cross-chain messaging infrastructure to create like routes, like our implementation of token bridging. So to transfer ERC20 or 721 tokens from one chain to another. So our work route is kind of making it easy to transfer the token of your choice from any chain to anywhere. That's kind of the whole idea. And you can see kind of here we have like a Hyperlane work route UI. And this might feel a bit abstract, but I'm going to be deploying a work route live today as well. So hopefully that will make it a bit more concrete. And just before we get to deploying a work route, now there are different work routes type. You know, I said like you can transfer any token, but what kind of token are we talking about? So this can be like a native token, a collateral token, like a classical ERC20, or it can be a synthetic, which is like minted on the other chain. And we have specialized work routes for extra use cases. Again, all the details you can find on the docs themselves. Today, what we're going to be doing, we'll choose a token from base and then we'll transfer, like we'll create like a synthetic version on it on another chain. So that is kind of the idea. Because we're using an ERC with ERC20, which is already like deployed on base, but it's not deployed on another chain. So the goal over here is that, you know, you want to have that token also on the other networks. But basically, the way we see modular security is you can think of them as Lego blocks, which you can kind of change. And they're essentially like in Hyperlane's terminology, we call them ISMs. And they're smart contracts which verify based on the requirements you can set. And I do have a bit more technical detail. So again, like you have a menu where you can choose from. And let's say like, you know, you want some extra security, which is not implemented by us yet. Teams are encouraged and it's very beneficial if you want to be like, oh, I want this security module, I'm going to build it myself. And you can create custom ISMs, which you can integrate to your application as well. This is just an extra step. Now, I do want to get a bit technical. I'm not going to get too much lost in how the protocol works, but I feel like it's always nice in case and assuming there are more technical folks listening. So then we can just go in a bit about the protocol overview, and hopefully at least for my case, when I first learned about Hyperlane and interoperability, it's always nice to have like a graph on where the parts fit in. Like I mentioned the security modules, I mentioned, you know, there are these different chains, but how exactly does that look like? I think it's always nice to just go like a tiny bit deeper. So just a short overview, and I realize now, like on the two screens that I have, the pink is a bit too shiny. I do like pink. I hope it's not hurting anyone's eyes. But the idea over here is that, so you can see over there, we have two different chains where you look at the origin and the destination. Now, what Hyperlane does is it provides like a certain interface from one chain to another. And we do this via mailbox contracts. So on the chains where Hyperlane is deployed, you will find the mailbox contracts, which are your entry and exit points. And then we have the agents in between, which carry the messages from one to another. And where the ISMs or the security models comes into place is that once a message is received on one chain, the ISM verifies, or the security module verifies, that the message is, you know, it passes the security requirements which has been set. And based on that, the message is then processed and sent to the app itself. So this is just like a short overview of how Hyperlane works without going into too much details. But essentially, the idea is that you have your interface into different chains, which you can send a message, and then through the agents that is carried to another chain. And you have a lot of customizable aspects in between, which give you the flexibility to kind of modify the security requirements or how you want the messages to be carried. And now this is kind of like an overview of, in general, what Hyperlane is, what we're aiming to solve, and how we address interoperability by creating like a more customizable framework. And next up, I want to talk about work routes, which is our implement. This is kind of an overview. Oop, I forgot I have this slide as well, but this kind of showcases the flow. So Mailbox, as I mentioned, is the interface into the different chains themselves. And then, as you can see, the relayer in between, and then the ISM. I actually now realize this is a police emoji. But this is kind of like the chart of the flow when you look into how token bridging works. Okay, so we can get to the demo now. And for folks listening, I have over here like a small GitHub repo, which has the demo guide. And then this is like a QR code as well. But let me flow back here. Okay, so this is a short developer workshop. The goal over here is to create to use the Hyperlane CLI and to create a warp route. And I'm going to be doing that. So I feel like, especially with live demos, there's always like Murphy Law, which comes into play. Hopefully, I did this like a few times. I don't expect anything breaking, but just saying. Before I do the demo, there is like only two things I did prior as well. Now, for this demo specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to create a warp route from base to optimism. I was just like filling my tokens to make sure I have like some balance over there. And this can be any network. This is just my choice because I had like some previous tokens to deploy for this demo. But again, the idea over here is that you can choose any network. Now, in my case, or not my case, but in this case, we are using networks which are already in the Hyperlane registry. So both, like you can go to the Hyperlane registry to see which chains are connected. Let's say like the chain
There's a lot
is
of
not
chains there. Do you know how many chains you have?
I believe we recently crossed 120. So for example, okay, so there's 20 hours ago, there was an update here, but I believe we are on 20 chains. So you have an interface into 20 different chains. So in this case, because we're deploying a token bridge, I'm not going to be connecting a new chain. But let's say like you have a new chain and you're like, my chain is not on there. What can I do? Well, then that's exactly where you can start with how to connect your chain with the Hyperlane guide, and you can first deploy your chain. You can submit a request to the registry. If you need any help, you can always reach out to us from the Hyperlane Discord. But I won't be doing this step because we're already using networks that are connected to the Hyperlane registry. Okay, this is kind of the guide which I'm following actually. I created like a smaller version of it, but we're following like how to bridge a token with Hyperlane Warp Routes guide. Okay, perfect. And for the steps prior, now that, okay, like our chains are in the Hyperlane registry, we don't need to do any additional steps over there. What I did do before, coming here is I do have the Hyperlane CLI. So the Hyperlane CLI is a command line tool which allows you to do quite a few stuff with Hyperlane, especially a lot of stuff on the warp route side to initialize, to deploy, to look at the registry. It's a super handy tool to use, and the main tool used for deploying warp routes and other kind of stuff you want to do. And then one other thing I did is I did set my private key just to make sure like I have it set before we deploy. But if you don't set your private key, it will ask you when you're deploying. So I kind of already set my private key, so just kind of want to mention that as well. And now that we have the basics covered, I think we can move forward. Okay, so
let's go.
It's always like stressful.
Yeah, when you move to your terminal window. Let's go.
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize a warp route. So the Hyperlane CLI is automatically guiding me, so I don't really need to do any extra steps. I just said Hyperlane warp init. Again, these commands are fine on the guide, so hopefully if I'm going faster, you can pause and go to the guide as well. But I'll try to like go slower as well. If it's too slow, you can do ×2. But for the network type, I'm going to select mainnet. You can see over here all the chains in the Hyperlane registry. I believe the command is Hyperlane registry also. We can look at that to see like the registry as well. So let's select base. I select with my keyboard. And then I'm going to select Optimism mainnet, but we can just have a look as well to see like all the chains here. So I'm going to be following most the prompts on the wizard. So this is my owner address. It automatically gets it. So I will be using, for the proxy admin contracts, you can basically find them over here on the registry. So when you deploy like to a certain network, you can come over to the registry and you can be like, okay, what is the proxy admin contract? Which I don't have my API key right now, so that's okay. We don't need to like add this. You can add this later on as well. It's basically asking for a Blocks Explorer API key. So then it will automatically verify the contracts. Okay, so this gave us like a configuration over here, the details, the ERC20 word details, ISM configurations, kind of making the default ones. So I'll just say yes. This doesn't take quite a long time, so we could just wait a few moments. And as I mentioned, now what's going on in the backend is it's deploying all the contracts which we need for the warp routes. So as you said, as we mentioned, it's deploying the ISM, the Hype ERC20 contract, so then it mints the token, but all the contracts are being deployed, like the Hype ERC20 collateral on base. So once these contracts are deployed, that's when you have your warp routes. And while this is loading, I can actually go over here back to the guide. If you run into any issues, we also have like a troubleshooting guide, which you can kind of follow along. You can make sure to have logging enabled. Mostly, yes, it's just very important to make sure that you use the correct RPCs, because like I see most failures due to RPC errors. If you're deploying networks, make sure you have like a good connection. And then, of course, like gas to pay for the transactions on the chains. But you can have a look at the troubleshooting guide if you run into any issues. And then for warp routes, we have both like a description overview of the warp routes and also quite a few warp routes guides to make sure that we can cover the scenarios which you're looking for. So this is actually like one of the most recent additions, the EVM SVM warp route guide. So if you want to create a guide, you can follow the steps over here. Or yes, you basically have quite a few different guides to follow along. And let's see if, okay, this actually deployed. Gas usage, we didn't pay much. And then technically we have our guide, like our token bridge set up, but let's see if this actually works, because I'm not going to leave it as this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the super bridge playground. This is like a sandbox where you can test your warp routes. It makes it quite easy. You can come over here and you can also find like the Hyperlane warp UI, which you can also kind of clone and test yourself. I'm going to use the super bridge, which is basically like a sandbox to allow me to test. But all the detail of what I'm doing is over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here. I'm going to customize my warp route. I copy the YAML file. Well, not file, but like the YAML outputs. Okay, awesome. I think now we want to do we did like from base. Oops, okay. And then the token here. Okay, so we have the fail. Let's try. Like, I think I should have to. But basically, as you can see, now we have this new Phi token, which you can send to different networks. So what we did today was we deployed like a new warp route. We were able to deploy all the contracts. We can actually even like try to send. I think this should be fine. I'm moving faster because I did read this multiple times. So yeah, as you saw, like we were able to like basically create a bridge for our one token from the base network to another network. Again, you can multiply this. You can do for different networks of your type. Let me start this as I explain as well. And the whole goal here is that now you can basically access the tokens you have here, the Phi tokens, on the other networks. And warp routes provide like a simplified way to do so. All the details are again found on the docs. And while this is kind of completing, I can go back to my slides, which I don't think I have much, but again, you can follow the demo over here. Just thinking if I forgot anything, I don't think so. But yes,
Eda,
so
just quickly, for getting started on that demo, I know we've been in the docs and there's a few quick start guides, but then there's also a repo that you can follow in GitHub. Where does one go, or is it the same content?
The docs has everything. The docs has all the links. So once you go to the docs, it prompts you multiple times, to join the Hyperlane Discord as well, especially the developers channel. You could definitely join there if you don't find the errors which you're facing there. But everything is on the docs. I did have like that small guide because it's like less It contains less information. I always feel like over information is better than less information, so that's why I think the docs are a better place. But especially for like demos, it's nice to follow like a structured, like smaller guide. Once you have that set up, you can go to the docs. But I definitely suggest the docs and then to join the Discord for any questions you have. Um, I know it's ideal to have all the answers on the docs as well, but I feel like especially in the blockchain world, it's always nice to be on the Discord and see other people building, and if you have any questions to ask them fast. So that's why I feel like the Discord is always great to join. And then you can follow us on Twitter for any kind of recent updates. We're working, I think this year, one of the things we're mostly focusing on is to expanding to different VMs. So now we're mainly on like the main VMs which we see, but like we're seeing the rise of alt VMs, so it's important to be on all the different networks. We don't really choose a network, and we're not like only, part of a certain ecosystem. But our goal here is to make the blockchain ecosystem more homogeneous, so then you can connect to all the different networks themselves. And then, yes, I kind of want to make sure, like, let's see if this worked. Okay, this didn't work. Okay, this actually worked. Okay, awesome. Let's see on the Explorer. Perfect. So as you saw, this we were able to transfer 10 Phi tokens to this address, which is the address which I had inputted, well, my wallet address. And it basically like 10 OP ERC 20 Phi tokens. But this is kind of, yeah, this was made. You can see the contracts over here, the contracts details, the transfer from which address to where. And then you have over here the ERC 20, which is basically like the contract. But
Perfect.
this is kind of an overview. Yeah, you can see over here the OP mainnet, but obviously if you could look at the base scanner, you'll see like your transfer from the base scanner as well. But yes, exactly. So, and then last is we are hiring. So if you're looking for working on Interop, FYI. But yeah, happy to answer any questions you have. This kind of concludes the end of my demo and all yours.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed that. So, you just mentioned the community, and I agree. It's always good to connect with developers who are building and kind of discuss and chat about things and just be active in the community. I have also previously joined community calls around by Hyperlane, and I remember they are really good if you want to learn more and very well attended. Does that still happen?
Yes, we had one, I think it was Monday. John runs the community calls. He's great. He gives like a condensed update of what we've been up to per month. So highly suggest that. They're live streamed through Twitter, so you can follow them there, and mostly like once a month.
Perfect. Yeah, highly recommend it. Another question I have for you is that we've looked at how to get started and how to build, basically. What about we've seen Hyperlane participating in quite a few hackathons over last year. So we've seen you folks around. So I was just wondering if you could share maybe any interesting projects that you've seen in the community being built recently, and maybe just some ideas for somebody who would like to get going with Hyperlane of what they could build in terms of projects.
Yes, exactly. I'm very glad you asked that because there is like a few things which I've noticed, especially in the past few hackathons, but also like upcoming ideas. One of them most exciting for me as well is one with AI agents, like how you can build like AI agents that make cross-chain transactions using Hyperlane. That is one thing which I'm extremely excited about, and I know the team is very excited about. I haven't seen like an implementation of it just yet, but I think like building something like that would be like very, very cool and great timing for it. Another thing I've seen is we also like have Hyperlane bounties. I actually think we just published like a bounty for like building an AI agent around cross-chain communication. Let me see if like I have the link handy here. I think it should be here. The bounties. So the Hyperlane bounties, you can find a list of the ideas which the team has, like which multiple people has. As you can see, like integrate Eliza OS with Hyperlane just opened like 11 hours ago. And you can see different ideas on what kind of stuff you want to build. I think one other cool thing is building ISMs with additional security features. Especially using zero knowledge cryptography, like zero knowledge proofs when you want to build ISMs. I think that's like another thing which I'm interested in. But not to be limited by my imagination, there's a whole list of bounties over here, which I'd highly suggest people to look at.
Awesome, thanks so much. Actually, it kind of leads me to my next question. I was going to ask if you accept community contributions to any of the code bases at Hyperlane. I was specifically thinking about CLI because obviously that is super useful. There's a lot of different features. Do you maybe accept community contributions for more features? Are there any other projects that people can have a look at and see whether they can work with you?
Absolutely. So Hyperlane is fully open source. You can see all the work which we're doing. You can like follow the repos. You can definitely contribute. I like I'm not sure if we have community contribution guidelines, but we're very open to having community contributions, and you can ask any questions which you have around that on the Discord if you feel like there's an issue, if you feel like there's something which is better solved another way. That's something which we're very open to. I know that there is like a lot of people which come to work at different teams, and I know within my team and previous teams as well, like once you start contributing to a project, you become part of it, and then like most people like end up joining the projects or like having some kind of side project which is very related to it. That's kind of like how my journey got into crypto as well, like started contributing because I saw like some things were like missing or wrong or need to be updated. So that's just like a side thing, but Hyperlane is fully open source. So anything you're like, oh, this needs to be changed. I think this is better. You can do that. We have the bounties where we do pay out like for like these kind of stuff, which we are specifically looking for. But again, like we are an open source team, which really accepts and wants, encourages open source contributions.
Perfect. Thank you. Fab. So my last question would be, is there anything maybe in person that's upcoming that folks can be looking forward to, or perhaps some maybe online events, any hackathons? How can devs can get involved?
Exactly. So there will be a few Hyperlane team members in ETH Denver. So we do try to go to the like a few hackathons a year and make sure we're there, make sure we can like help support people in real life. I'm not sure about the hackathon list for this year yet. I think that's a bit more in the making, but we'll be sure to be at like the major ETH Global hackathons, Dev Connect, there to help support developers online as well. But for the most upcoming event, there's ETH Denver coming up. There's also like a Hyperlane ambassadors program. I forget the names, but like we have a program where people can run community meetups. I can share the link to that, but the goal there is so that we can support you on organizing like a Hyperlane meetup within your city. I think maybe pilots programs, but I'm forgetting the name. There's too many like names to remember. But the goal over there is, let's say like you want to kind of organize like a small community meetup. We support you in doing that and we encourage that so you can apply to the Hyperlane program. And we'll be happy to get in touch and make sure that we give you all the requirements to make it happen.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. I think that was it. That was great, Eda. I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thanks for the demo. Thanks for taking us through. I'm sure our developers will find all that super useful. And yeah, for everybody who joined us today, thanks for watching. Do join Hyperlane community on Discord. Join Rootstock community on Discord if you haven't done so already. And yeah, let's build together. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for having me. It's helpful to use. So I'm just going to go here, like for example, for base addresses, the proxy admin contract. I got this here. So first of all, use an existing proxy admin contract. I'll say yes to this, and then I'll add the address. And then I'm going to slip the ISM setup so then we can quickly have it up and running. Okay, so for base token type, I'm going to be choosing collateral, as I said, which is going to be a classical ERC20, nothing extra, nothing special. And then enter the existing token address. So I was just like looking at the tokens on base, and I thought it would be cool to like work with Phi token, the AI bot. So I'm going to go up here. I can copy the contract address. And now the same questions will be prompted for the second network, the destination network, which we chose. So I'll say yes. I'll go over here to the registry. So for the other side, for the destination side, now we're going to be choosing synthetic token because what this will be creating is it's going to be creating an HyperERC20 contract, which automatically mints the tokens we want on the other chain. So I can directly create synthetic, and the backend, like the Hyperlane CLI, will handle all the contract deployments. Okay, awesome. So this basically created like a config file for us. And you can see over here the details, the token type, the owner address, the proxy admin address, and I think I have it here. Okay, perfect. I just have the folder open here as well, but you can kind of see the details, any change needed, you can go ahead and adjust them. And then now that we have like initialized a configuration file, what we need to do is we need to deploy. For the deployment, as I mentioned, you need to have your hype key set up. Otherwise, it will ask you when you deploy. Another thing which I mentioned is you do need to pay for the gas when you deploy the contracts. So make sure to have like some kind of tokens on the networks you're deploying to, because otherwise you will get like a transaction unsuccessful error. The command is pretty straightforward. Hyperlane warp deploy.